I'm the director for the film.
So talk about talk about doing kind of the different art styles based on the different time periods in the film.
The art style in and of itself is the same. There were just like considerations of the genre of each one. So we had like a good and the bad and the ugly, Conan the Barbarian, and 50s noir. And so like there were some post stuff that was in there, but the basic graphic style that we've been holding over the series that we've been working on is the same. So we worked with a lot of the same studios. They knew what we were going for. So it's not necessarily a style change. It was more of just a slight post effect that we added to it.
Was there anything that was completely off limits? I know it's R-rated, but was there anything DC was like, you can't do this?
Oh, there always is, but you know, we were. I think when you've worked in animation enough, you know certain things that you cannot do, even if you're like, oh, that'd be really cool, but you're like, there's certain things that'll never pass what we do. So we usually just know which ones to walk right around, and we kind of know this. This was like, especially with the Conan the Barbarian story, it's kind of like you have to be a little more violent with that. So it was, the treatment had to change, so we adjusted to that. There were some things where like, do we peel this back or not? Because there was some talk about should we keep this PG-13 or should we go R. Played around with it, and I think by the end we're like, no, this needs to be that because of what we've been doing with the Tomorrowverse in terms of like consequences for the characters, but also like what this film in particular needed, and that it was on Warworld, so it's not a nice world thing out.
So we've seen like the Trinity in many different adaptations and everything. So, well, as a director, what type of like approach you like to see bring something different we haven't seen before?
There wasn't so. The way it works is like the producer leads a lot of the art style for it. My job is to take the script and translate it into visuals, and then try to create as much suspense, fear, happiness, all of that into it, you know, by the sequence of images that I create. The inspiration for all that was definitely being to play in worlds that we never get to as animators within the superhero universe, especially with these characters. So being able to say, hey, let's do a good, bad, and the ugly. Hey, let's do Conan. Hey, let's do a 50s noir. That was like really exciting to do because you never get to do that. It's always modern superhero, and that's it. So
you have like was one of the eras like your favorite that came out like better than
well, I mean, I'm one of those kids that kind of got half babysat with the TV and half was like running around all over. My parents had no idea where I was. So I watched so many reruns. So all of those were things like, you never get to touch on those worlds doing this stuff. But also, like, I was able to bring all that back. All the, you know, the cowboy movies, reruns that I would watch, and the Conan kind of esque movies that we would watch, including Conan the Barbarian. And then my mom, who was big into black and white, kind of noir, and all those movies, I'd be watching those with her. So those all kind of came together into this thing. So probably will never get a chance to do that again. So. I think the brutality was one of the big things that kind of pushed it into R, was really unnecessary. And also, I think a lot of the battle scenes were really cool to do because it was just like, we don't often get a chance to kind of show that on a screen like this. Thank you. I think also was, I think when I read in the script, one of the main villains doing something that you never see in a fantasy world was a really great flip, you know, to take it where it was starting to give you clues about what was going on at the same time. Just playing with magical, mechanical, you know, all these pieces in that, and mix it into one story that's cohesive like that was probably the most exciting part about that one specifically.
There's a scene in the Conan sequence where Batman leaves a guy to get devoured by a monster. The guy survives, but was there discussion, would Batman really do that? Or?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was for playing with the audience. Yeah, letting them rethink, you know, who is this character? What is it? We don't obviously don't want to leave the audience where like, oh, of course, like we don't we want the audience to be pushed back and forth to where they're going emotionally and reacting to it. So there wasn't much of this discussion because we kind of like read it through script and like, yeah, that makes perfect sense in the situation that we're in, what we're trying to get.
Going back to the beginning, what was your approach going into this project compared to the previous projects and the most recent ones?
I think it's the same thing. It was trying to maintain a tonal thing we were trying to do with them all, but also being in these different worlds where these characters don't know themselves. So, what would they do different in this situation, but also staying true to who that character is in the long run? In the overall story, you have to be very careful through it because it's really easy to, when they don't know who they are, you have to kind of somehow imply, but they'd still make that decision. You know,
You're still friends, or you still would be.
yeah, exactly. Or it'd be like, even though this is a brutal world, this decision would be more advantageous to them, but because of who they are, they say no.
Was there anything in the film after you saw it that you were like, I kind of wish we had explored a little bit more?
Every film you will ever do will be that. So there's many things I wish we could do that, but you also have to walk away, just do the best you can, and accept what you did, because you only have so much time, so much money, and so much sleep you can do without.
That's interesting because piggybacking on that, you have a nice long history, you have all of these characters, you only have so much time. How do you decide who gets the majority of the focus but yet still stay true to the whole?
Right. I think we were very careful about the order of it, being able to do each one. But we're also riding a little bit on the audience knowing something about these characters. So it's a balance you have to have between knowing the character and knowing the audience. Being able to, you want to be careful to stay true to the character, explain why they would do it, but also assume a little bit. So you don't want to underestimate the audience at the same time. But also, what if someone who's never seen this comes and sees this? So it's a balance you have to strike along the way and make decisions as you go.
So do you lean more toward trying to capture that new audience, or give something to the hardcore fans, or the...
That is the one thing we try not to think about. Like, you first and foremost tell the best story you can. If there's some stuff that naturally and organically shows up to do those things, great. There's times we'll throw Easter eggs in there, or we'll throw like an allusion to a movie or a scene or something like that. We'll do that because it adds to the story and makes perfect sense. But there's times when we're like, we're not going to force that. We're not going to push it just because like someone likes this or that person likes that. You're betraying the film if you start trying to please one subset of people.
It's really good to hear, actually. Very refreshing.
Anybody else?
Sorry, we're gonna wrap it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm Butch Lukic. I'm the executive producer for Warworld. Justice League.
What was your favorite time period to deal with in the movie?
Well, again, I told them the barbarian part, but I've been a big Western fan all my life, so I wanted a chance to get to do that in animation. So finally, we did it. I had to incorporate it with 3 other genres because no one's going to buy a Western by itself nowadays. I mean, yeah, I know there's pockets of interest in Westerns, but not, they're not going to spend money on a whole movie, especially animated. So that was part of the motivation.
What else attracted you to this particular project early on?
Well, it's part of a storyline that we've been working on for the last few years, so it's just another part of that puzzle that we continued for the last few movies. It's just another now added story element that we're moving towards.
So you do have an overall plan on the trajectory of all these films?
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us about it. No, I'm kidding.
So, I know my particular, might be of the Justice League episodes, very much Hills, and the one where you got Warlord Scarlets. You worked on the Justice League cartoon, curious if those episodes influenced or inspired this project.
Well, yeah, I mean, those were the episodes at that time, and because back then we weren't, before Justice League, we weren't allowed to do any of those extra characters from the DC universe. And then finally DC allowed us to have at it, take anyone you want. So that's when we did the Western version plus Warworld back then. And even when we got to this, I realized, it's been 20 years since we even went back there. So in one way, it's like it doesn't connect, but it's more out of ambition for me to want to go back to those type of worlds and do them again in animation.
Does having the actors return, does that drive the direction of where you're going to be going? Do you know what they're capable of delivering?
Well, when we started this, we had to get the commitment for the actors, the main actors, that they would stick with us throughout all these movies. Because I didn't want to switch out if they weren't committed. So Jensen, Stana, and Darren Chris, they were all in, and they've gone with us on the journey through the whole process and every movie. Sometimes you get actors where they decide, I don't want to do it anymore, and then we have to find a new voice. But these guys have been with us the whole time. Too bad they're not with us now, but
So, speaking of terms of the DC universe is constantly changing in terms of its overall story and connectivity. My question is in terms of anything that you want to look forward to in terms of where you want to take the Tomorrowverse or what to see moving forward?
Well, for me, we have an end with the Tomorrowverse. This is one of the later movies, so at some point we're ending it. So I've already gotten to that. In my head, we've already gotten to it in script. We've almost animated the rest of them. It takes about 1.5 years for one of these to get out. So there's 2 more that I have in the can, and there's another one we're working on, and beyond that, we don't know.
James Gunn taking over DC going to affect the story of where you're going?
No, because this is all preset before he arrived, so we get to finish it off, and whatever he's going to do beyond that, that's got nothing to do with this storyline. All right.
So you said you have 2 in the can, working on a 3rd, so 3 more to finish off the series, right?
Maybe 3. Yeah, we'll see.
You could split them up like the Hunger Games, right? Breaking in about 15 different movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Is there any, voice actors that you wanted to get, haven't been able to, or some kind of dream casting that you can tell us about?
Well, yeah. I mean, I want Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, and Bob I mean, am I going to get them? No.
You never know.
Well, I could get Al Pacino now. We almost did, but he passed away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, get Harrison Ford. We got, we get Luke Skywalker every once in a while.
What are you most excited for people? Because obviously it's screening tonight. So what are you most excited for people to see?
Well, I think it's all the characters and how they're fish out of water in in these environments, and how they finally get together and find each other through water. Other than that, I don't know.
Is there a particular character you identify with more than
Yeah, Batman. Who doesn't? No, Wonder Woman, actually.
So, speaking of Batman, there's a scene in the movie where Batman does leave a guy to get killed by a monster. What was it like kind of pushing the heroes to, their limits character-wise, having them do stuff they normally wouldn't do?
Yeah, I mean, he's a mercenary in this, so he's playing that character because that's what he thinks he is. So that's the reason. And it gives a different take on him. what his nature is or what it could be if things, didn't go the way they went.
And did you have fun exploring all the new, like you said, the mercenary of Batman, so taking these characters kind of in a new direction?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is, we got him out of the bat costume for a while. That's great, because the thing is, most of the time, home video, you can't do a movie if it was one of the lesser characters. They always want Batman. They always want Superman. Wonder Woman, not so much. Well, Batman's in it, but we're not playing him as Batman, so that's great. He does become Batman later, but most of the film is not Batman. It's Bruce Wayne.
How difficult is it to split time between your heavy hitters and some other maybe B squad, C squad guys you want to bring in?
Well, it is difficult. One, because the storyline is centered around the main three, and the other characters always come in secondary. They're either playing as a partner with them or a villain against them or something like that. So that's about as best we can do.
Right.
I think we all love the animated worlds, the animated movies. The live action stuff has been mixed. Why is it that we love the animated almost in a universal fashion, but the live seems to be kind of mixed?
Well, look, I mean, I grew up reading comics. I still read comics. I don't know about those live action guys, what they've done and how they grew up. We were artists, so I always wanted to be a comic book artist. I was going to work for DC, for Marvel. But I chose animation instead because it pays better and the checks are more consistent. And again, we were basically grew up with it in our heads. We know what these characters are. We knew it from when we were children to adults, so we knew what the best parts of them were, what were the best stories. So even from Batman animated series, that brought all of us together, guys that grew up wanting to do Batman right for the first time, So I think it goes from there. It's like naturally we have more of a sense of how to do these superhero stories. That's where we originally were intending to be. And writers. Forget about that.
Who would have thought? You have a fan in charge of designing it, and it's great.
Now, the other thing, unfortunately, is, they always say, oh, yeah, we love these guys and what they do, blah, 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 but they never call us. They never ask us anything.